Back to school can be a very stressful time, especially for those kiddos, and Health Solution wants to help you ease that anxiety. And here to give us some advice is Chief Operations Officer Jason Chippeaux. So thank you so much for being here today. I think this is a really important topic, especially with kids, starting to get in the groove of things and maybe things aren't going quite the way that they thought they would. So you guys can definitely help with that.
Absolutely.
All right. So maybe for people who don't know the exact definition of anxiety, what exactly is it?
One of the first things to remember about anxiety is that, first of all, it's normal. And so we tend to associate any kind of negative emotion or experience as something that's abnormal, but anxiety is very normal. And it's also, in the right dose and at the right time, can be helpful. And so you think of a scenario where if you have a test coming up and you have anxiety and that creates behavior change where you start to study a little bit, you start to catch up and review, well, that's a helpful experience of anxiety, right? So in general, anxiety is made up of two things. It's what's going on in your thoughts, your cognitions, and it's also what's going on with your body. So there's a physical response that happens, and that's an increased heart rate, maybe your breathing accelerates, and so you combine those two things and that creates the emotion that we experience as anxiety.
Absolutely. So it's a very normal thing
Very
to
normal.
feel. And so kids then can experience that feeling as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And because they can experience it, they can also learn how to manage it. Managing anxiety is a skill, right?
Yeah, we were just talking about it beforehand. My brother just started high school, and that's a really stressful time for kids, and they can probably feel a lot of anxiety starting that new chapter of their lives because they don't know, what's coming up for them. So it's important to kind of know how to manage it. And so how can it kind of affect your overall health then, if you're feeling that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the most direct way that it can influence your health is, anxiety can affect your appetite. It can affect your sleep patterns. It can affect your ability to concentrate or think clearly. But those who struggle with excessive amounts of anxiety or unmanaged anxiety, it can also push them towards unhealthy coping mechanisms. Drinking, using drugs, doing things to try to placate the anxiety that aren't necessarily healthy.
Right, and again, just another reason why it's so important to know how to manage it. So let's talk about some of those tactics, to kind of reduce some of that back to school anxiety. Maybe there's some moms or parents watching right now that they're like, my kid is really struggling with this. How can they help?
Yeah. One of the first things to remember is that what we talked about, anxiety is primarily two things. It's what you're thinking and it's what your body's doing. And so we're going to grab control of both of those things. And so one of the things that's very helpful on the thinking side is to have some things that you can say to yourself when you feel that anxiety coming up. You got this. You're okay. Today's an easy day. Been here before. I can handle this. And you might coach your kids, and for younger kids, you might have to script that for them. Right. You're strong. You're courageous. You're smart.
Self-affirmation.
That's right. That's right. And so things that they can not necessarily say out loud, certainly they can, but they can think. And that helps you gain control of your thoughts. One of the more practical things that you can do to gain control of your body is the breath. And it's just very simple, a very deep. And then if you pair that with some of those positive thoughts, I'm strong, I'm calm. And you can do that, and you can do that with your kids, and you can go back and forth, and it's very helpful. We do that in my family all the time. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we talk about taking control of the breath and taking control of the thought.
And I think that's great for the parents too. If you do it with your kids, maybe you're feeling some stress from work, or maybe stress that you're sending your kid off to school, so you can release some of that stress with some breathing as well. Absolutely.
And I don't want to be remiss, and so these are things you can tell your kids to do when they're feeling anxious. It's also the parent's job to make sure that there's nothing in the environment that might be a real reason for them being anxious. If there's bullying occurring at school, or if they have a learning disability that's not being addressed, or a hearing or vision problem. And so, you want to look at the whole picture when you're dealing with anxiety when it comes to school.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and for those very helpful tips. And for more information on everything Health Solution provides and to get more tips, you can visit health.solutions.